The slap cracked through the Sapphire Lounge so violently that even the DJ froze mid-beat. Clara Evans tasted blood before she understood what had happened. One moment she was clearing a glass, and the next she was staring up at Vincenzo Moretti, the man every criminal in New York feared. "Where is it?" he growled, towering over her. "My watch." "Don't play stupid." Clara's cheek throbbed. Her hands shook. But somewhere beneath the pain, something long buried finally rose. "I didn't steal from you," she whispered, voice trembling but hardening. Enzo stepped closer, smiling like a man convinced he owned everyone's fate. "Sweetheart, in this room, your word means nothing." That was when Clara reached into her pocket. Not for a weapon but for a scratched ancient burner phone. The entire VIP room fell silent as she pressed one button. A deep voice answered on the first ring. Clara locked eyes with Enzo, her gaze turning icy. "Daddy, he hit me." Enzo's confidence drained in an instant. Men who ruled cities rarely feared anything, until they heard the name waiting on the other end of her call. What happens next will shake the entire room. If this moment hooked you, hit like and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so you never miss the next story. The silence in the Sapphire Lounge stretched so tightly it felt as if the room itself might tear. Clara kept the phone pressed to her ear, the dim VIP lights trembling against her bruised cheek. Enzo didn't move, couldn't move. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, as if the shy waitress he thought he could crush had been nothing but a mask hiding someone he never should have touched. Clara lowered the phone slowly. "You heard him," she murmured. "My father is coming." For a moment Enzo looked like he was still trying to deny it, still trying to gather the shattered pieces of the arrogance he'd worn like armor. But then his hands slipped from his sides, fingers trembling. The king of Midtown suddenly looked like a man standing on the edge of a building he didn't realize he'd climbed. The manager, Henderson, hovered behind a column, too afraid to speak, too afraid to run. Several patrons hugged the walls, whispering into designer sleeves, eyes wide, phones half-raised but not daring to record. Everyone understood the same truth. Whatever story had started tonight, they were trapped inside it. Clara stood up. The ache in her cheek burned with every heartbeat, but her spine felt steady for the first time in years. She didn't back away when Enzo moved. She didn't flinch when he reached out a hand and stopped himself just inches from her arm, unsure if he even had permission to speak. I didn't know," Enzo whispered, the words sounding foreign in his own throat. "And that makes it acceptable?" Clara asked, her voice cool and even. "If I had been just a waitress, your anger would have been justified." "No," he said, shaking his head sharply. "No, I was wrong. Completely wrong." Clara turned away from him, scanning the room. Every face reflected a mixture of fear and morbid fascination. But she wasn't afraid now. Not of Enzo, not of the crowd, not of the lingering sting across her skin. For the first time since running from Sicily, she felt the ground beneath her feet belonged to her. "Find your watch," Clara said. "Because if my father walks in and I'm still being accused, the consequences won't stop with you." Enzo swallowed hard and snapped toward his men. "Lock the doors. Nobody leaves until we find it." The search tore through the room like a storm. Chairs flipped, cushions split open, bags emptied. People protested, shouted, cursed, but none of it mattered. Enzo paced in the center of the chaos, running a hand through his hair, muttering to himself, "It has to be here. It was right here. Someone saw something." Clara stayed seated. She watched everything with detached clarity, as if the fear that once sat permanently in her chest had finally burnt away. When Bianca's silver clutch spilled open and the platinum watch slid out, the room erupted with gasps. Bianca's excuses fell apart before they even reached her lips. Enzo didn't shout. He didn't hit anything. His face simply drained of color as he stared at the woman he'd chosen to believe over an innocent girl. Clara didn't interrupt when Enzo brought the watch to her, barely able to raise his hands without shaking. She simply said, "Your mistake is yours to fix." And that was enough. By the time the lounge doors burst open and Alessandro Vitti stepped inside, flanked by federal agents trailing discreetly behind him, alerted by an anonymous tip earlier that night. The entire club felt suspended in a breathless stillness. Even the air seemed to fear him. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Every step he took made the ground feel thinner beneath Enzo's feet. "Which one of you touched my daughter?" he asked quietly. Enzo tried to speak, tried to stand tall. But the weight of his own choices had already begun to crush him. "Mr. Viti," he forced out. "I didn't know." "That is the problem," Viti replied, his voice a cold, precise blade. "You did not know. You did not ask. You acted as if this city were your personal stage." Enzo bowed his head, barely able to meet the older man's gaze. "I found the watch. She didn't take it. I swear." "You accused her," Viti said. "You humiliated her. You struck her. And you believe a simple correction erases that." Clara stepped forward. "Papa," she said softly, "let me handle this." And she did. She told Viti in front of everyone that she wanted safety, independence, control of her life. She wanted to stay in New York, but on her own terms. She wanted her identity back, not as the daughter of a feared man, but as someone capable of building something real. Viti studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Your life, your choice." He turned to Enzo. "Your punishment will not be my hands. It will be hers." Enzo froze. Clara looked at him steadily. "You will answer for what you did," she said. "Not with blood. Not with violence. You will answer the one way men like you fear most." Enzo swallowed. "What do you want?" "Truth," Clara replied. "In public." And she made sure it happened. Rumors spread through Manhattan within hours. By morning, half the city knew that the feared Vincenzo Moretti had assaulted a young waitress in his own club, and had been caught lying about it. Reporters swarmed the Sapphire Lounge, cameras flashing like relentless lightning. The video leaked almost immediately. Enzo ordering the doors locked, screaming accusations, calling Clara a thief. The slap wasn't caught on camera, but his rage, his entitlement, was unmistakable. And then came the footage nobody expected. Clara standing beside her father while Enzo publicly admitted the truth. He spoke into dozens of microphones, voice raw, eyes hollow. "I abused my power. I accused an innocent woman. I struck her. I allowed a thief to hide behind me. I endangered everyone in that club. I am stepping down from all ownership and leadership within the Moretti organization. Effective immediately." Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. People online exploded with shock. Clara watched him with unreadable eyes. She didn't smile. Not yet. Behind the scenes, things moved fast. Federal investigators, quietly notified by those who wanted the Moretti empire weakened, seized financial records, froze accounts, and opened old, dusty files that Enzo hoped would never see daylight. Partners severed ties. Properties were raided. Trusted allies scrambled to save themselves, leaving Enzo standing alone in the ruins of his empire. For the first time in years, he had no men to command, no power to wield, no throne to sit on. And all of it had started with one lie, one slap, one moment where he believed he could crush someone beneath him without consequence. Days later, a hearing was held. Not for mafia business, not for criminal charges, but for the public assault on a service worker, captured in witness statements and corroborated by patrons. Enzo sat at the defense table, shoulders slumped, hair unkempt, the weight of 100 headlines pressing down on him. Clara entered the courtroom wearing a simple navy dress. No makeup on her bruise. No jewelry. No entourage. She sat across from him, calm and poised. When called to speak, she didn't rant. She didn't cry. She didn't embellish. She told the truth. "This isn't about me," she said. "This is about every person treated like they're invisible. Every worker who has been yelled at, shoved, insulted, or threatened because someone richer thought their money made them untouchable. Doesn't. No one is above accountability." Her voice echoed through the silent room. And for the first time in her life, Clara realized she wasn't speaking as the daughter of a man feared on 2 continents. She was speaking as herself. The judge ordered community service, restitution, public liability penalties, and a mandatory rehabilitation program for anger and misconduct. But the harsher punishment didn't come from the court. Came from the world outside. Clubs dropped his name from their walls. His penthouse lease was terminated. Former allies refused his calls. Enzo Moretti, once the most feared young force in New York's underworld, became a cautionary tale. Sharp, swift, humiliating. Clara didn't celebrate his downfall. But she didn't pity him either. One evening, as she stood outside the Sapphire Lounge, now under new ownership with improved worker protections, she felt a presence behind her. Enzo approached slowly, shoulders lowered, hands out of his pockets so she could see he meant no harm. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," he said quietly. "I know I lost that right." Clara nodded. "Good. Because forgiveness is not yours to request." Enzo glanced at the refurbished entrance, the bustling workers inside, the bright lights that replaced the dim glow of secrets. "You changed this place." "I changed myself," she corrected. The place followed. He let out a breath that sounded like resignation. "I deserved everything that happened." "You did," she agreed. "But what happens next depends on you." He blinked. "Next?" Clara tilted her head. "You can stay the man you were, angry, entitled, reckless. Or you can rebuild yourself. Not your empire. Yourself." Enzo didn't reply. He simply nodded once, stepped back and walked into the night. Not as a king, not as a villain, but as a man stripped of everything except the chance to choose who he would become. Clara watched him go. Her cheek no longer throbbed. Her heart no longer trembled. Her past no longer chased her steps. She was free. And justice, true, undeniable justice, had been served. When the noise of the courtroom faded and the city lights flickered back into place, Clara stepped outside and felt something she hadn't touched in years. Quiet. Not the kind that comes from fear, but the kind born from reclaiming a life she once thought she'd lost. The world hadn't changed overnight, but she had. The girl who used to disappear in crowded rooms now walked with her head high, carrying nothing but the truth she fought to defend. Enzo passed her on the courthouse steps, no longer a figure casting shadows, but a man learning how to stand without borrowed power. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Some endings don't need apologies, they just need distance. Clara turned toward the street, watching a gust of wind lift a torn, help-wanted flyer from the pavement. Months ago, that flyer might have felt like a lifeline. Today it was only paper. She kept walking, letting it drift behind her. A quiet reminder of everything she'd left behind, and everything ahead she now chose for herself. And that's the heart of this story. Sometimes the strongest victory isn't defeating someone else, but reclaiming who you are. If this journey moved you, please like, share, and help Canada's Heartfelt Tales grow by subscribing to the channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.